It is week 92 on EconoChat. Let's talk business with Mr. Daniel Steinman. A warm welcome to all our listeners, and of course a warm welcome to Mr. Daniel Steinman himself. And I will be your hostess on this talk today, as always. A warm welcome to everyone. We are talking the cost of living. These type of conversations happen in our households. It happens among, friends sitting at the dinner table, and it's a normal conversation that we have, and I think we won't stop talking about it anytime soon.
Yeah, no, thank you for the welcome, Elsabe. The cost of living crisis, there's no end in sight. If one take what's been happening in the world in terms of the disruption to energy sources, to gas and to oil, and I'm talking in the wider market. And I've explained many times that the inflation that we see locally is not something that we do. It's not from local demand.
Yeah.
It's exogenous. It's imported. And there's basically nothing we can do about it.
Yeah.
But one would have hoped that after a year and a half of very elevated inflation levels, it would have sort of normalized and get back to where it was, or so that you can actually live. That has not happened. And in the meantime, Bank of Namibia has gone and raised the interest rate by almost 200%.
Yeah.
So then it really becomes a bit of a joke if the government offers the civil servants a 5% raise. It becomes an even bigger joke if you consider that the government has to go and borrow money to pay that 5%
Salaries,
increase to its own employees. The easiest solution would just have been to bring the interest rate down, if you're talking about liquidity.
Yeah.
But that's a bit technical, and that pertains to policy, of which the outcome is not always immediately visible. And you're not always sure whether the policy that you introduce will have the desired effect. We need to consider, if we want to sort of come to a conclusion, is there a way that this crisis can be mitigated? Then we need to look at what is the normal functions of price mechanisms in the retail market. And I'm not talking now about toys for children and camping gear and sports gear and this sort of thing. I'm not talking about fancy stuff,
Luxury stuff.
Luxuries. I'm talking about basic needs. I'm talking about mealie meal and rice and oats and cooking oil and sugar and salt, and then meat, but the cheapest type of meat that you can imagine. So what I've noticed since more or less October 2022 is that the prices started escalating, but drastically.
Yeah.
You basically could see it by the week. And if you went by the month, it was measurable. And after a year and a half, my rough estimate is that the prices of basics, and now I'm including cleaning stuff, I'm taking it a little bit wider than just food.
Yeah.
Food is the core of the crisis.
Yeah.
But if you run a household and there's a family living in a house, they have to keep that house clean. So you cannot ignore the escalation in the price of soap, for instance. And it doesn't need to be fancy soap. We're talking about the most basic bulk 5-liter soap that you can buy at Crazy Store, which is about the cheapest soap you can get in Windhoek. And I'm making this a bit of a joke, but it's actually sad.
It is.
It's a tragedy, that a household cannot afford to buy the cheapest soap on the market to keep the place where they stay clean. That they cannot afford to buy the cheapest staple food so that they can eat a decent meal every evening. This is a crisis. So if you look at the way that price mechanisms work, you will see that there's a fairly acceptable thing that we call price adjustments. And this is part of consumer behavior and consumer psychology, and it's a legal way for retailers to manipulate prices to make certain products more attractive at certain times. Now this sounds very abstract. What do I mean? I mean that if they want to offer a special, a really good special, that would attract a lot of attention and lots of people coming into the shop, it's usual to increase the price for about 3 or 4 weeks in advance, but not a lot. I'm talking about cents, you know. If the thing is $60 or $70 or $80, we're talking about $1 or $2, you know, so that when they offer the special, they don't need to go below input price, what they pay for the thing. Sometimes they do, especially if you yourself is the manufacturer of that product. And here we think of the O&L relationship between Pick n Pay and the breweries, for instance, you know, or Pick n Pay and Namibia Dairies. Ultimately, they all belong to the same group, so they've got a little bit more flexibility to make price adjustments. This is all acceptable. This we know, because let's say about a year and a half ago, the half a kilogram coffee was still $46 for 1 kilo, the kilo brick coffee. That same thing is now $157. I nearly fell off my own legs yesterday when I saw that new price. You know, so when something is like that is on special, you know it won't stay on special forever. At some point the price will normalize, but you also know that there will always be a special again, and when the price increase after the special, it doesn't go haywire, it doesn't explode, you know, it is very much in line, and that is what is not happening, and that is why I perceive a crisis, and that's why I have no problem in describing it as a crisis, a major crisis for all Namibians.
Okay, on that one, let's quickly go for a short break, and once we come back, we'll get into more detail onto what is the reason for food prices.